The building you see behind me was erected in 1791. It was built by the miners themselves, and they must have done a good job because it survived all the Leadhills winters since then. If you look at it, you will see it's basically a miner's cottage, although without internal divisions. It's not the first building that the library had. There was one before, but we no longer know where that is. The library was founded in 1741 by the miners themselves, and it's the world's first library for working people, and it's also the first subscription library in Scotland. It has a stock now surviving today of about 2,500 volumes. Originally there was probably as many as 4,000 volumes, and it represents a history of reading over a period of about 300 years, and it demonstrates how ordinary people were able to find time to read and improve themselves. Well, hello everybody. My name is John Crawford, and I'm chairman of Leadhills Heritage Trust. And Leadhills Heritage Trust main property is the library building which I'm in. This is Leadhills Miners Library, and it was founded in 1741. It's the first and oldest subscription library in Britain, but more importantly than that, it's the very first library in the world for working people, something which perhaps isn't well enough known. The miners worked 6-hour days, so they had time for reading to give them something to do when they weren't working. And various visitors to Leadhills in the 19th century commented on how well educated the miners were and how much they knew about current affairs and their level of general knowledge. The library was run like a club or a society. You paid a subscription to join, and that entitled you to become a member of the library and borrow books, and you also received a handsome certificate. The certificate wasn't just a bit of paper, it was a property, because you could pass it on to somebody else or bequeath it to a descendant. The library stock is quite varied. It covers a period of something approaching 300 years, and it represents a history of reading by ordinary people over that time. At the early period, there was quite a lot of books on religion because the miners were quite interested in that, and then they began to buy books on other non-fiction subjects, and then they diversified into fiction, so they were eventually reading pretty much what we see today. The first books were added in the 1740s and the last one in the 1960s, so it was a very long period of book acquisition. Unfortunately, we don't know terribly much about how heavily the books were used, although some of them are in very poor condition, which suggests very heavy use. We're very fortunate in having a number of treasures, the most notable of which is probably the library banner. It dates to about 1820, and library banners are extremely rare. There's probably only about 4 or 5 surviving, and we're lucky enough to have the oldest. It depicts a pillar, and at the base of it the tools that the miners themselves used. It is quite an unusual thing, and we took it to the Antiques Roadshow several years ago, and it actually appeared in the Antiques Roadshow, so it got quite a lot of coverage. Something else which is unique is the library pulpit. Pulpits are very rare in libraries. In fact, as far as I know, there aren't any. This one is unique. It dates to 1886, and if you look at the board behind the pulpit, you will see a quotation, and that's a quotation from Alan Ramsay's play The Gentle Shepherd. Ramsay was a native of Leadhills and was much admired in the village in the 19th century. In fact, it was erroneously believed that he had in fact founded the library. We also have a ballot box, and ballot boxes were used to decide whether people should be admitted as members. The ballot box contains black balls and white balls for approval, black balls for rejection. As far as I'm aware, nobody was ever turned down for membership. We have a large collection of what are called bargain books. There's 46 manuscript volumes covering the period 1737 to 1854, and they're a form of employment record, and they record the contracts made between teams of miners, usually up to about 8, and the mine management to cut a certain amount of lead in the lead mine. It's the largest collection in Scotland and one of the largest collections in Britain. It's important not only for history of lead mining, but also there's a great deal of information about family history, and visitors to the library are often interested in it. So I think we have something here we can really be proud of. It's a great tribute to the achievements of working people over many years, living in quite difficult circumstances in quite a remote location, and it's a great tribute to working class intellectual activity in Scotland in the 18th and 19th centuries.